Okay, so if you recall from the last video, we utilized the input function and entered what is your age inside parentheses. We then wanted to store the result as an integer, so we passed this into an int function, and then we assign this to a variable called age. Now when we typed in anything other than digits, for example if I put the word 2, we run into a value error telling us that we have an invalid literal for int with base 10. And this is something we want to avoid in our programs in case a user enters in something that we don't expect them to. So let's see how we can tackle this specific use case. We'll first of all define a function, and we'll call this function request_age, and then we'll put a set of parentheses. We will then in the body of the function create a variable called age, and we'll set this equal to input what is your age. And then we will return the int of age. So if I now call request_age and pass in the integer 2, you can see that we get 2 returned. And this is exactly what we would expect if a user was to enter in information. So what can we add to this function to make sure that we always get an integer returned? Well, first of all, we'll want to put some form of loop in place to make sure that we keep requesting information if they are providing something that's not expected. So let's create this while loop. We'll first of all create a variable called age, and we'll set this equal to an empty string. We can then create a while loop which checks this variable to make sure that there is a digit inside of it. And there is a handy method that we can use on Python string objects, and this is known as isDigit. Now isDigit is a built-in method that we can use for string handling, so if all characters in the string are digits, the isDigit method would return true for that string object. And if there's a character that's not a digit, it will return false. So we can put an expression which checks that age.isDigit, which we know will return true or false, is equal to false. Now if age does contain a character which is not a digit, this will evaluate to true, and therefore we want to request information from the user. So we can then put age equals input and then what is your age. So what this is saying is until every single character in the age variable is a digit, ask for input asking them for their age. Now we can also put another conditional statement to give them more information, so we could put something like if age.isDigit is equal to false, then print please enter digits only. Now if we simply leave it like this and then return the int of age, when I call the request_age function, we first of all get presented with what is your age, because age at this point contains an empty string. So if I type in 20 and then press return, you can see that we get a message telling us to please enter digits only, and then it asks us for our age again, because age.isDigit is still equal to false, and therefore it requests more input. And if I put the letter R, we get asked again. If I put 5t, we get asked again, and it will keep asking us until we put a valid digit. So if I now put 40, you can see that 40 then gets returned because the age.isDigit condition now evaluates to true, and therefore we return the integer of the value that's passed in to the input function. So this is a way of being able to perform a check on input from a user. Now let's see another example of a form of check that we might want to do. So let's suppose we want to request whether a user wants to play the game again or not, and we expect a user to put in Y or N to denote the fact they want to play again or not. So first of all, we'll define a function called play_again. We'll then put parentheses and then a colon. And we're going to start by creating a variable called answer, and we're going to once again set this to an empty string. Now because we know we're working with a string object here, we can once again perform a loop to make sure that we're getting the expected input from the user. So if we're expecting to only get the values Y or N, bearing in mind we don't know if they're going to give it to us in capitals or not, what we could do is create an expression that checks to see if answer.lower, i.e. we call the lower method on this string object which converts all string characters into lowercase, and we check to see that it's not in, and then we can simply put Y or N in a list, which we know will check each of these items individually. If this evaluates to true, i.e. if answer does not contain a Y or does not contain N, then we want to set a variable called answer and collect the input. So we can then put input, do you want to play again? Now if the answer.lower equals Y, we want to return true. And if answer.lower equals N, we want to return false. Now if it doesn't contain Y or N, we want to give the user some more information, so we could put an else condition here, and we can simply print out enter Y or N only. Now it doesn't matter if the user puts in a capital Y or a lowercase y, a capital N or a lowercase n, because our expressions are taking care of this nuance by using the lower method on the string object. So when I run the play again function, we get the question, do you want to play again? But because we don't get much guidance here, a user may put something in like yes. Now if they do this, you can see that we get a message prompting us to enter Y or N only. Now if I put something other than a Y or N, so let's say we made a typo and we put a capital T, you can once again see that we're still requesting input until such time that the input is in line with expectation. So we're asked, do you want to play again? If we now put capital Y, you can see that this function returns true. And I can now use this function in other parts of the code in our conditional checks to see if a user wants to play again or not. And if I was to call the play again function and this time put in a capital N, you can see that the function returns false and therefore could be used in a conditional statement elsewhere in our code to highlight the fact that the user doesn't want to play this game again, so would likely break out of any game loop that we have going on in our code. So hopefully you've followed along with both of these examples. We've seen a couple of ways to validate code in order to get expected input from a user. If the input doesn't comply with something that we expect, then we can throw a message to the screen and then re-request that input. Only when the user provides the expected input should we return the value, and then we can use this elsewhere in our code, knowing that we've got the right values contained in the variable.